So likewise, other nutrients will perform. No, nothing likewise, but they will have their own role. They will have their own role. Like we have said, so for leguminous plants, one will help. For non-leguminous plants, one will help. So for grass, one will help. For actinorhizal plants, one will help. So it depends upon the group of plants, likewise. So there is nothing like with respect to their productivity or efficiency, likewise. Okay, so then oxygen. Next thing is oxygen cycle. So oxygen cycle. So it's not much useful, or there won't be any complexity in this. Simply thing is that we have to understand that oxygen is also one of the nutrient, and that is helpful for the sustenance of the life, and oxygen would be circulated among the various components of the environment. So we have like basically like when we talk from the perspective of production of the oxygen, so usually oxygen can be produced in which phase? So it can be produced in one thing, during the process of photosynthesis and during the process of photolysis. Okay, photolysis. Photolysis of what? Photolysis of water. Okay, photolysis, breakdown of the water in the presence of sunlight. So that process is known as photolysis. Photo means light, lysis means breakdown. So photolysis of water. During this process, oxygen can be released. And during the process of photosynthesis, okay, during this process also oxygen would be released into environment. So these are the two major processes which leads to release of oxygen into environment. So then how it would be used? So how it would be utilized means it would be utilized in various processes, like for example for animal respiration and for plant respiration. Okay, so this is one major thing. And during the process of decomposition, some amount of oxygen would be utilized by the microorganisms for their survival. Okay, so plant respiration, animal respiration, decomposition or by decomposers. So for all these things oxygen would be utilized. Okay, and then for like we will have for burning of the fossil fuels. For during the process of burning, we need oxygen. Without oxygen, we can't burn anything. So for that process, we will have for combustion or burning. So in all these processes like respiration, decomposition, burning and combustion. So these are the processes which will help in the depletion of the oxygen, and photosynthesis and photolysis. These are the two important processes which helps in release of the oxygen. Okay, so there would be a balance so between the release as well as the utilization or consumption. So this will circulate in the atmosphere like this. What you have to remember here in the sense, which process will help in the release of the oxygen, which process will help in the consumption of the oxygen. That's it. Okay, photolysis, photosynthesis, like respiration, decomposition, combustion and burning. So these are the processes. So question can be like this: which of the following processes are concerned or are related with the oxygen cycle? That can be one thing. Or which of the following processes are responsible for depletion of the oxygen, or like a release of the oxygen in the environment? So likewise, so they may give these things and they may ask like how many of the above, how many of the below, likewise. Okay, so that is one thing. In the similar fashion, next gaseous cycle that we have is carbon cycle. So carbon is another important nutrient that is required both for the plants as well as for the living organisms, for animals. So here, how carbon would be circulated and what are the important processes that are involved. So if we talk from the process of carbon cycle, important processes responsible for release of the carbon dioxide. So release, you see all the yellow lines, like simply you can remember like plant respiration and animal respiration. Plants and animals, when they respire, they will release carbon dioxide. Okay, plant respiration, animal respiration, and apart from this, when we try to after decomposition, so carbon dioxide would be one end product in decomposition. So respiration, plant and animal respiration, decomposition and combustion. After the combustion, like it is like automobile exhaust or like burning of wood and all those things, it will release carbon into atmosphere. So these are the process that will release carbon into atmosphere. And what are the various processes that will help in consumption of oxygen, carbon dioxide. Means like, let's say, photosynthesis. In the process of photosynthesis, carbon dioxide would be used. Then in the process of, for decomposition of this, so some amount of carbon dioxide also would be used. And then like for conversion of these fossils, so usually some amount of carbon dioxide also would be used. So mostly mostly photosynthesis will be the process. Okay, photosynthesis would be the chief process that is responsible for the consumption. Okay, likewise.
Sir, in such case, if it is, what are the processes that lead to release of carbon? That is, decomposition is not the release part, or we
Yes.
should keep it in
Most we can keep it. We can keep it in both. We can keep it in both, and mostly like a carbon dioxide. Carbon is also one of the end product of decomposition. So we can have it, or we can place it in both the sides. No issues. Okay. So that is one thing. So processes involved in carbon cycle: photosynthesis, respiration, combustion. These are the three important processes that you can remember. Okay. So then next, if you see, so simple things like photosynthesis is one thing, respiration is one thing, and combustion is last final. So you can remember these major things. Okay. So that is with respect to carbon cycle. So then mostly you are aware with the water cycle or hydrogen cycle. So water cycle means circulation of the water amongst various components of the environment or earth. So we have atmosphere, we have hydrosphere, we have all other biosphere and all those things. So here, so you might be aware of various processes involved. Okay. Now we have sunlight, we may have water on the earth. So first and foremost process that will happen is that water would be generally there in liquid form, isn't it? So when sunlight, due to sunlight, so the water that is present on the ground would be converted into gas, would be converted into gaseous form. That process of conversion of water, liquid, into gaseous form is nothing but evaporation. I get. So first process is evaporation. Okay. Then next process is there would be some amount of water that would be that has been absorbed by the plants, and the water that is present in the plant that would be further converted or released into atmosphere in the form of gas. So release of water or loss of water from the leaves of the plants is nothing but transpiration. Okay, transpiration means loss of water from the plants in the form of gas. That means water would be converted in the form of gas and that would be released. So evaporation is one thing, one process. Transpiration is another process. So due to this two process, water would be released into atmosphere in the form of gases. And then once it is released, then this water vapor which is present in the atmosphere, it would be converted into a small water droplets by the process called condensation. So condensation would be the next step. Condensation means condensing something, means when you're tightly packing up something, that is nothing but condensing. For example, when you're packing your bags, you will condense the things in your bag, likewise. So that things would be there in a packed manner. So all the water droplets under favorable conditions, they will be grouped into one body. So that body is known as cloud. So condensation means conversion of these water vapors into a form of clouds. It is nothing but condensation. So evaporation, transpiration, then next step is condensation, and after condensation, when favorable conditions prevails, so these condensed things called clouds, they will reach the ground again in the form of water, in the form of precipitation. Okay. So precipitation means there are various forms of precipitation for us. So what are the various types of forms of precipitation? Good. Rainfall, snowfall, hail, yes, then sleet, all those things. So it can be any form. It can be solid form, it can be liquid form. So it will fall onto the ground. So that process is known as precipitation. And then after falling on the ground, so rain, when it falls on the ground, so then it will have flow. So we will call it as flow. During the process of flow, like usually some amount will overflow and it reaches the various water bodies, and some amount of the water would be actively absorbed by the soil. Okay, so that process of absorption is nothing but infiltration. Okay, some amount of water would be infiltrated into the soil and to the rocks and all those things into the lithosphere. So what will happen? So here we have atmosphere, okay, we have hydrosphere, we have lithosphere, and we have biosphere also. That means like plants, other living organisms also will release. So like in all these processes, hydrogen would be circulated like this. So this is hydrogen cycle, and simply you can remember various steps: evaporation, transpiration, condensation, precipitation, and like runoff and infiltration. Okay, so from normally like loss of water from living organisms like animals, this is known as perspiration. We will call what? Sweat. So it is nothing but perspiration. So transpiration means loss of water from the leaves of the plants. Perspiration means loss of water from the animal bodies. Perspiration. Okay, so that is also one thing, but it is very, very minimal. So that's why we are not bringing that.
But can we maintain that process that is
Yes, good. So that is nothing but perspiration. Perspiration. Okay, perspiration means it is like we will call sweat. So the process of liberation of sweat is nothing but perspiration. So environment or like climate is perspirating, like perspiration, likewise. So that is one another process. So this is with respect to the hydrogen cycle. So then last and the final cycles that we will have are nothing but the sedimentary cycles like phosphorus cycle and the sulfur cycle. Okay, so here you remember one important thing is that what are the sources of the phosphorus? So phosphorus is generally stored, or it would be present in the atmosphere in the form of rocks. Okay, phosphate rocks. Phosphate rocks are the important sources of phosphorus on the earth. So as the phosphorus would be chiefly stored in the rocks, so we are classifying it under the sedimentary cycle. And phosphorus is one of the vital nutrient that is responsible for the survival of the life. So if we talk from that perspective, so we have various like photosynthesis, for the process of photosynthesis in the chlorophyll or in the form of for the nucleic acids, like for ATP in the form of ATP. So in all these things we can have the phosphorus. Okay, so now you remember rocks would be there in the earth. Okay, so chief sources like phosphate rocks. So assume those rocks can be underground, or those rocks can be in the form of mountains, like phosphate containing mountains likewise. So chief source is phosphate rocks. So now you just consider from here, phosphates might be present in the soil or rocks. So these phosphates would be first, it would be absorbed by the plants. Okay, after absorption of the plants, then the plants would be consumed by the animals. So thus phosphates would be absorbed by the animals. Then after some time, these plants and animals may die. So again what will happen? So this death of plants and animals, it leads to after some time they have to be decomposed. So in the decomposition process, so again after decomposition, phosphates would be again released back into the soil, or it would be released back to the environment in the soil. So this is one way how phosphorus cycle will work. And another side, now you say take an example of a mountain or a rock which is outside the earth. So weathering of the rock may take place. Weathering means the process of breakdown of the rocks. So it can be due to air, it can be due to rain, or it can be due to various other agents, animals. So weathering of rocks takes place. During the process of weathering of rocks, phosphates can be released into environment. And these phosphates which are released through the weathering of rocks, they may enter into the soil, and they can be converted into underground underground reserves like this. So this is one thing. And on other side, what may happen, like assume there is rain. Due to rain, there is weathering of the rocks. And during this process, can we expect that some amount of phosphates might be carried by the rain water into water bodies? Yes. So this carrying away of the phosphates by the rainwater will enrich the water bodies with phosphates. So thus phosphorus can reach the water bodies also, like ocean, seas, or like rivers, all those things. So that's half. Okay. So finally, like these phosphates will also may reach the ground portions, and we can expect the formation of underwater phosphate reserves. Okay, over the course of time, like it is very geological process. So these phosphates may continuously may be deposited at one place, and in the course of time, due to geological process, these reserves may be uplifted and they may form into rocks. Okay, geological uplifting. So we are not saying in short term, but they may happen and they may again become the phosphate rock or phosphate mountain like this. So this is one way how it will happen. So here these phosphate underground reserves are there for us, and sometimes they may also leach. Due to leaching of the process, they may reach the water bodies. Okay, so what are the important processes that are involved in the phosphate cycle? Means you have to remember all these processes. One is weathering of the rocks, other one is erosion process, by the process of erosion, and by the process of mining is one another thing, decomposition is one another thing. So they are nothing but some of the leaching is one another process. So these are some of the important processes that are involved in phosphorus cycle. Yes. Leaching means like removal of the top layers of the soil. Like for example, when like when for example, if you flush water, so obviously what will happen, so they will be taken carried away from one place to another place due to that force. That process known as leaching. Okay, washing away is nothing but leaching. So that is one thing. So usually where it is found, and it's a slow process, and very important point that you have to keep here in mind is this process. The last line, you make it like categorical statement. There is no real gaseous phase. No real gaseous phase. So in the form of gas, it won't be circulated. So that one thing you have to remember. So categorical statement. Last one is sulfur. So how sulfur would be released, and what are the various processes? For example, if you talk about other things, like let's say carbon, hydrogen, or like the gaseous cycle. So gaseous cycle, they usually like the store was the atmosphere. So if we talk from the phosphorus cycle, phosphorus will never be stored in either atmosphere, okay, or it can be just it cannot have any active gaseous phase. So atmosphere, it cannot be circulated through atmosphere. Okay, it can be either circulated through the water, or it can be circulated through the soil or rocks like this. So that is one. That's what like we are mentioning, like no real gas phase. So sulfur cycle. Sulfur cycle means like sulfur is another important component for us, nutrient for us. So in what ways it can be released? So it can be released in various aspects. Like you remember, like volcanic eruption is one of the important source of liberation of sulfur. Sulfur dioxide would be released here. And while we were studying about environmental pollution, we also studied that sulfur dioxide also would be released from automobile exhaust. So, or like industrial emissions. Now, you remember, one process is volcanic eruption or vulcanization, and other processes like the industrial process, like smelting and burning of fossil fuels. Fossil fuels means petroleum, coal, petroleum, or like industrial process, all of those things. So two major sources of emission of sulfur into our sources of sulfur is, one is volcanic natural process like volcanic eruptions, and other thing is artificial process like burning of fossil fuels. So these are two. And in what ways it would be utilized? Where what are the other process? Means it would be other process would be like, for example, the sulfur. So that may be like through the process of weathering of rocks. So we can have sulfur containing rocks. So weathering of the rocks. So then like through surface runoff, it may reach the water bodies, or it may reach the soil. So then it would be absorbed by the soil. So after absorption by the soil, so plants may take up this sulfate, and from plants it may go to animals, from again animals when they want it to be decomposed. So again, we will get organic sulfur. So likewise, it would be keep on circulating. So if you see in simple manner, important process would be like weathering of rocks, erosion, mining, decomposition, normal things, because it is a kind of sedimentary cycle. Okay, so processes. You have to remember processes. Very, very, very important thing, and what you should not miss is this last point. Okay, so two of its components, remember, two of its compounds like hydrogen sulfide H2S and sulfur dioxide, so add gaseous component to its cycle. So there is a slight amount of gaseous form of sulfur cycle. Okay, so only two components, hydrogen sulfide and sulfur dioxide, they will be circulated in gaseous form, and rest it would be majorly sedimentary in nature, to take this categorical. So if the statement says like this, remember, like for example, sulfur cycle is entirely sedimentary in nature, false. There is no active form of gaseous cycle in the sulfur cycle, false. Okay, slight amount can be possible. And in the similar fashion, categorical statement is that there is no active gaseous, or there is no active real gaseous phase of phosphorus cycle. You consider that. Okay.